Hello, I'm Therese Fischer, and I'm really excited to talk a bit about my fellowship with the Wildlife Conservation Society. Conservation. What comes to mind when you hear this word? Maybe it's an African elephant, or some sea turtles and plastic straws. For me anyways, these were the kind of environmental icons that I associated with the term conservation before I worked with the Wildlife Conservation Society this summer. The organization's mission is to protect wild places and species worldwide, but what most people are unaware of, and I know that I was at least before I started working with WCS, is that this conservation work can't be carried out without Indigenous peoples and local communities, or IPLC. WCS has been in close collaboration with over 250 ethnic groups and 1,000 local communities across 60 countries in both marine and terrestrial systems for about a century. But unfortunately, this fruitful connection and the stories of IPLC involved in this work tend to be understated because WCS socials place such an emphasis on wildlife. It makes sense that the Wildlife Conservation Society highlights wildlife, but I wanted to figure out a way to maintain this focus while also bringing the stories of IPLC to the forefront. So this brought me to the first communication challenge I set out to address this summer. WCS's collaboration with IPLC is not evident. To get an overall initial understanding of the IPLC stories that already existed on WCS socials, my colleague Chinyu Yu and I conducted a social media analysis. We reviewed and analyzed 60 stories about IPLC from 20 of WCS's regional programs' social media platforms. We found that of the IPLC stories that existed on WCS socials, those about rights and equality had the lowest engagement, introducing an additional communication challenge. Now, I knew that I couldn't address the first communication challenge without also addressing the second, because there is an interplay between Indigenous peoples and local communities, their rights, and the environment. Issues of rights and equality are a large part of most IPLC stories. I now had two communication challenges to address. So our social media analysis made it pretty clear that there aren't that many IPLC stories on WCS socials to begin with. So I figured a clear solution was to simply increase IPLC content. However, because of the second communication challenge, I knew that this content had to be strategically curated. There are many reasons why IPLC stories about rights and equality may have low engagement. And a probable explanation is because issues of rights and equality may not touch on a person's individual identity, making it unrelatable and possibly irrelevant. The AIDA, Attention, Interest, Desire, and Action model, poses that people take a particular mental pathway before acting. And under this theoretical framework, an individual's awareness fosters interest, which sparks desire, driving action. The AIDA model suggests that if IPLC stories were able to generate more interest among WCS's online audiences, then engagement should also increase. So behavioral scientist Dr. Gadna Sridhar conducted a study in 2021 to assess the impact of storytelling in social media advertisements on wildlife conservation engagement. The African Wildlife Foundation put out several advertisements on Facebook, and these ads featured various animals, but they all highlighted the role of humans in wildlife conservation. The amount of times that Facebook users clicked on the ads to the donation pages were recorded to measure engagement. And it was found that the ads that featured the African elephant, which is this NGO's flagship animal, actually had lower engagement compared to ads that featured wild dogs, which is a species that previously received the lowest amount of donations and really low engagement. So based on these findings, Dr. Sridhar concluded that unknown yet interesting plots drive engagement for conservation initiatives because people are attracted to novel and human-centered stories on social media. So instead of trying to make IPLC stories more relatable to a broader audience, their unique narratives should be utilized. And that's exactly what we did. So WCS country program directors nominated staff members who identify as IPLC and who have made notable conservation contributions to their home communities. And this summer, I had the privilege of interviewing 6 of these conservation heroes, and I used their stories to create a digital interactive storybook.
La conservación es conservar, como dice la palabra, ecosistemas.
此刻呢就过哈节都会飘，是就记者里。
The conversations that I had with these 6 conservation heroes were so deeply enlightening and touching, and their stories truly speak for themselves. Rodrigo, who has been a park ranger at Tierra de Fuego for nearly 11 years. Preeti, who is the vital bridge between WCS and her home village in Nagaland, India. Shibani, who once did not know how to swim and is now one of the best benthic monitors of WCS's marine program in Tonga, Tanzania. Ina, who continues to help her community in Aceh, Indonesia, prepare for potential natural disasters, which becomes a growing concern as the climate continues to change. Dorje, who helped to train local Tibetan people to collect data themselves. And Suleimani, who works with the local fishing communities of northern Zanzibar to keep the marine ecosystem healthy. So when you think of the term conservation, I hope you think of IPLC like Rodrigo, Preeti, Shibani, Ina, Dorje, and Suleimani. I hope you're reminded that there are real people who have and continue to fight for future generations and the health of this planet. Indigenous peoples, local communities, and their stories are behind global conservation. Thank you.